So I'm really excited for our next reader, who is I was so delighted that Moira MacDonald is here with us tonight. And she's a longtime arts critic for the Seattle Times. Her debut novel, Storybook Ending, was published in May 2025 by Dutton Books Penguin Random House and is being translated to 18 languages. She's here to share some of that with us. Thank you, Moira.
Here we are. Thank you for inviting me. This is a lovely, lovely evening and a nice tradition. Let's see. My book is something of a comedy of manners, centering around a letter that is left in a book for a specific person to find, except as often happens with such gestures, the right person doesn't find it. Somebody else does. I am going to read just a few pages. This is from the very beginning of the book. My main character, April, this first chapter is from her perspective, she is a woman in her 30s who lives on her own, works from home post-pandemic, and is rather lonely. She has a bookstore down the street, a bookstore that bears an uncanny resemblance to Ravenna Third Place Books, which is down the street from where I live. Because she's alone a lot, she's inside her head a lot, and she thinks, well, wouldn't it be fun if I just left a note for that handsome guy who works behind the used book counter at the bookstore? That might be a nice way to meet a person. You know, when you're alone a lot, you think about things like that. So she has left him a note, and we're going to get into April's head a little bit, just a few pages. She is at home in her apartment. A buzz from her apartment's intercom interrupted April's thoughts, startling her. She was, as usual, not expecting anyone. Her brother Ben was the only person in her life with a habit of showing up unannounced. And this afternoon, she knew he was at an audition for a musical, despite not being able to sing. She crossed the room and pressed the button. Hello? I have a pizza delivery for Jackson? Sorry, April said. That's next door, number 305. This wasn't the first time the pizza man had gotten it wrong. Mr. Jackson, a retired schoolteacher with whom April had chatted briefly a couple of times in the lobby, ordered pizza every Thursday. She was uncomfortably aware of knowing this. Maybe she had a little too much time to study her neighbor's habits. Thanks. From her window, April watched the pizza man return to his car, a tiny two-door with an enormous plastic pizza slice on top. Maybe someone was waiting for him at the end of his shift. Someone who had thought to preheat the oven for the pizza he would bring home. Someone interested in hearing about his day and his adventures in pizza delivering. Someone who hadn't had to leave a note in a book to meet someone. The little car drove away. Anyway, the letter was done. And then what would happen if the bookstore man did read it? Probably nothing, April thought, back to her desk and back to overthinking. Maybe grown-up women working grown-up tech jobs from home shouldn't be imagining themselves as the not blonde heroine of a Nora Ephron movie. Maybe boredom and solitude had led her to take a step too far. Maybe she wasn't really much of a writer. It wasn't even truly a letter, just a paragraph, really. And maybe it needed another draft. It was too short, not funny enough. April believed in rewriting, in trying to make things better. In the empty stretch of her evening, she feared the letter left in the book would be met with silence. It had perhaps been a crazy idea. But April's life was in need of a crazy idea to shake things up. Mostly she spent long hours in her apartment, working remotely for an online real estate company, a job that mainly consisted of writing cheery emails to potential home sellers, and then reading at night. She loved to read. It had always been her way of tuning out the world, of postponing troubles and escaping someplace else. As a child, her favorite days were trips to the library, when she'd stumble back into the car balancing a small mountain of books, reading on her bed until the afternoon light faded and her mother called her in for dinner. She had loved Francie Nolan reading on the fire escape in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, or Jo March weeping over fiction while perched in a tree in Little Women, the all-of-a-kind family sisters in their matching dresses and pinafores, making their own ritual trips to the library. April didn't have sisters in real life. She had Ben, but he was another story entirely. But books had given them to her. These days, she was mostly reading mysteries in which lone wolf female detectives, all of whom, like herself, seemed to live alone in quirky apartments and have a strange assortment of mismatched food in their refrigerators, somehow always seemed to be stumbling into mysterious murders they were able to figure out through nothing more than clever deduction. April imagined she might be good at this. Maybe just from reading all those novels. In the same way that after watching all of Call the Midwife on Netflix, she was fairly certain she could deliver a baby in a pinch. as long as it wasn't breach. But the opportunity had not arisen. Maybe the letter was an attempt to create a little mystery of her own. Like her mystery heroines, April didn't mind living alone, despite the odd bump in the night that made her wish for another person in the room, at least just for a moment. Sometimes her old building just seemed to need to stretch out its bones and make mysterious sounds, like little whispers from inhabitants past. Even in daytime, her apartment had pleasantly squeaky floors that seemed to remember other footsteps. When she was younger, April had dreamed of living in an apartment like this, somewhere all hers, with pretty leaded glass windows and books. But now sometimes she wondered if this was really how adult life was supposed to be, this quiet stretch of days not too different from any other, this low-key contentment that never quite became all-out happiness. Long ago, she had thought 33 was a ripe old age, and that by that time she'd be happily settled in a rich, full life. There wasn't anything wrong with April's life, really, but she just always seemed to feel like she was waiting for something, for love, for a job that wasn't just okay, for busy gatherings with friends, for something unexpected. As a regular at Read the Room, that's the name of the bookstore, April had chosen the apartment several years ago not just for its vintage charm, but also its proximity to the bookstore, where she had a fantasy of working someday. But she'd often surreptitiously watch the man at the desk, from a table in the cafe or from the corner of her eye as she browsed the shelves. He was handsome, but in a way that indicated he didn't really know it. He was always absently rubbing his hand through his hair, leaving it whimsically askew. He seemed, from what she could observe, like he might have a sense of humor. She liked the way he laughed at his colleagues' jokes. Not a big guffaw, but a soft, throaty peal, often chiming in just a bit later than everyone else. He wore no wedding ring. He didn't seem to have any particular attachment to anyone else at the store, from what she could see. Of course, she had no idea if any of these impressions were accurate. For all she knew, he was gay or deeply involved with somebody very impressive, or a total jerk, or maybe all of the above. Or if he would in any way welcome her approach. But the only way to find out was to reach out. And April believed the whimsy of sending a letter, rather than directly approaching him, might appeal. Well, she believed it yesterday, and it was too late to undo it now. April closed her laptop for the day, pondered leftovers for dinner, and tried to focus on other things. Like why it was that whenever she saved up to buy some longed-for piece of furniture, it never looked quite at home in her apartment, as if it was an early party guest waiting for the rest of the A-list to arrive. Or why she was receiving strange unknown texts from someone looking for their wayward son-in-law. Or whether it would be rude to ask her next-door neighbor in 303, who was taking tango lessons, to turn down the bandoneon music and maybe practice in socks after 10. She texted her brother Ben just to check in. How did the audition go? He replied quickly, as he usually did. Not great, I guess they were looking for singers. April, snorting quietly to herself, typed, well, it was a musical, but then quickly deleted it, sending a heart emoji instead. The evening passed quietly, as evenings so often did, like links on an endless chain. A pretty chain, but maybe one that needed a pendant or something. Late at night, reading her latest mystery in bed, she kept thinking of the letter, sitting just a few blocks away on a counter in the store, a tiny corner peeking out from the pages of the thick red and black hardcover like a hand reaching out into the unknown. The nice thing about mysteries and novels was that they always got solved, though maybe not the way you thought they would. Thank you.